Hello and welcome to the Powered by Rock podcast, where I'm going to be speaking with Vaden Lewis, the frontman of the legendary Texas rock band Toadies, today about, well, as much as he can about the Toadies, because they are one of my top 5 favorite bands of all time. And I've had a lot of questions, which 95% we won't have time for today. But let's see how deep we can get on the 5% that we have time for. We'll be speaking with the rock legend himself, Vaden Lewis, right after this. You're listening to the Powered by Rock podcast with your host, Isaac Kuhlman. The Powered by Rock podcast was created to help showcase some of the best rock musicians in the world and to pass on to future generations the rock music that has inspired rock fans around the world for decades. We want listeners to be able to hear great stories and life experiences directly from their favorite artists, as well as dig deeper into music theory and talk rock like no other show you've ever heard. This isn't about looking cool, it's about getting real and having a great time. Without further ado, let's start the show. Hello. Welcome to the Powered by Rock podcast. I am super excited to be speaking with Vaden Lewis from the Toadies. Or I should say Toadies. I think that's commonly mixed up. People say the Toadies when it's just actually Toadies, just like Eagles, which most people remember from their debut album Rubberneck that came out in 1994 and became a huge success behind the lead single Possum Kingdom. But this band has actually been kicking ass for the past 25 years or more without much major radio airplay on every album, which is pretty exciting because it's a lot of DIY and small label kind of stuff. But it's been awesome. It's great to have you on the show. Welcome, Vaden. Come on in.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
How's everything going today?
Good, man. Yeah, good.
Awesome. So I've always told people that, if I could ever join one band and play with that band on planet Earth, any band, it would be Toadies. I don't really know why, but I figured I know I can't fit the bill. I'm not nearly as good as you guys are, but I always felt like your guys' music was just so damn interesting and raw in a way that makes it feel accessible. But then the subject matter is usually dark or macabre, which piles onto my fascination. Did you kind of have any idea what the Toadies or Toadies might be as a band when you first started? Or was it kind of, once you started putting songs together, just kind of became this kind of thing?
The latter, the second of those two things. I just wanted to do rock that was I wanted to do what I wanted to hear, and I was hearing close to it, real close to it. But I mean, I wanted to hear interesting music that had jacked up, weird lyrics. And, and so it was the headspace I was in at the time. So it just kind of worked out.
Yeah. And obviously we'll talk a lot about Rubberneck on this particular episode, because you guys are actually celebrating. It's been out over 25 years now, but you guys are actually doing a 25-year anniversary tour because it couldn't do it during the time when you wanted to do it. And you're actually going to be playing with Reverend Horton Heat, who are good friends of yours. And they're going to be playing their full album of Liquor in the Front, which liquor as in hard alcohol, not just it's a kind of pun there. But can you talk about the relationship and friendship with Reverend Horton Heat and how this tour came together?
Yeah. I mean, geez, I have to go back so many years when this was supposed to happen the first time.
Yeah.
This is the third time that we're trying to pull it off. And, but yeah, it's just, I always thought that the Toadies and the Reverend brought out something different from DFW, and that kind of made us similar, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, for sure.
It wasn't very similar, but just the idea of doing this thing that was not like everybody around us, this kind of made me gravitate towards them.
Yeah, so I'm actually kind of interested because I've been to Texas quite a few times. I don't live there; I live in Vegas now, but there does seem to be kind of like a little bit of a similar sense of Nashville, and some bands in Texas kind of have that kind of jangly rock sound to it. And is it kind of like what you're referring to? Is that's kind of that seems like the prominent, I should say, hello, dog, the prominent sound that you get from cities like Austin and Nashville, aside from, like you said, like you guys and Reverend Horton Heat and a few other bands out there that are just doing things their own way. Yeah.
What you said.
Sounds good. Yeah, because every time I go there, I see people with mustaches that play like a Fender Telecaster, and they kind of play the same sound. And it's very similar music. And I'm like, right. You guys are all wearing plaid shirts. You all have mustaches. You all play a Fender Strat or a Telecaster, and you sound exactly the same. But why? I don't understand why it's like that.
Don't know either. I don't know either. I don't know, man. It's funny because speaking of what a genre, like people that look all the same do the genre of music, and looking back on it, I'm like, oh yeah, I fell into that with the plaids, and get off me, dog. But fell into it with the plaids and the loud colors and stuff. But at the time, it was just so distracting. I'm so sorry.
No, that's all right.
Just what we were doing, and it was just kind of a thing, and I don't know. Sorry about that.
All good. I have a couple of dogs and a 1-year-old, so I know how loud it can be right outside your door and in your room and everything like that. So yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, we left them unsupervised for 45 minutes and came home to a remote control that was half digested.
Oh,
so I feel like I need to keep an eye on them.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So let's talk about another thing. Obviously, you speaking of the Dallas-Fort Worth area, you guys are kind of like a national treasure, but you're also a very specific local treasure in that area, where to the point where you guys have your own day, Toadies Day, which is celebrated on December 30th. Was there a significance to that day before you guys started playing the Billy Bob's Texas Festival, or was that kind of linked together?
That's just when we started doing it. We've never liked doing New Year's Eve shows. They're always there's a disruption in the middle of the set to the countdown. And then what do? Just pick up where you left off, or do you start a second set? And it's just a headache. And then everybody's all smashed and you got to deal with all that.
Yeah.
So we got offered, and we've been wanting to play Billy Bob's forever. And we got offered the 30th of December, and like, oh, it's best of both worlds. Play the night before, stay home the night of.
Yeah.
And it's been a great run. And so, just right before COVID, the last year before COVID, the mayor gave us a proclamation, actually from the governor, who I'm not a big fan of, but we don't need to go there.
Yeah.
But
Governor Abbott, I think that's his name, right? He's not doing good things for a lot of people in Texas right now.
He's doing things.
Yeah, he's definitely doing things. A lot like DeSantis in Florida.
Exactly. Yeah.
But obviously
it was a great honor. We got to the mayor, had a ceremony, and she, it was like, it was super nice. Just what a nice thing.
So let's also talk about the Dia De Los Toadies festival for years, which you guys started as a kind of an all Texas band festival, grew a bit, and then you guys kind of stopped putting it on. I can only imagine the headaches of an annual festival and doing a lot of that stuff to, the logistics and stuff like that. But do you feel like there's a clamoring or an itch to kind of put the festival back on in the near future?
I've learned to never say never, but we did 10 years. And it was a good run. And the impetus for it was when we first got back together in 2008 and put out that record, which was No Deliverance.
Yep.
Yeah, that's right.
Yep.
And then we started getting offers to do these like radio festivals, and and the offers were okay, but it was like, well, what if we just started talking, and I think we were doing one of these festivals in the dressing room, like, what if we just picked all the bands ourselves and just did it ourselves, and it'd be a huge pain in the ass, but would also be way more fulfilling. And so we did. And then
I'm sure you guys probably got your own cut of the money a little bit better when you do it yourselves versus like getting.
There's so much business to it, because then you got to pay for fencing and stages and all this other security and toilets and everything. But it was just a blast. And after a few years, we decided to add a second night like a pre-night. And it was super chill. And we sat around with acoustic guitars, and we had a way scaled down crowd of like maybe 400. And then just played to those people and revamped all of the songs to that format, which is just a mental gymnastics trying to make that work when you've got a 40-second feedback break in the middle of a song. What are you gonna do?
You mean on the song Tyler, for example?
Yeah, exactly. Possum Kingdom and Tyler. Yeah. So we worked around it, and that all started actually from I read forever ago that a good song can be played. I either read this or made it up. I tend to do that. But a good song can be played on any instrument, and it'll still be a good song.
Yeah.
And so I thought, well, I wonder if my songs are any good. So I put it to the test, and some of them worked out better than others, but they were all just fun to play, and then we'd throw in some weird covers, and it was a blast. Yeah.
Yeah. So was that kind of the impetus of the album Heretics then?
Yeah, exactly. We had all these recordings of because we recorded everything, and we had all these recordings, and we thought, we should do these, but do them in a studio and like really get in there and do it. And so we went back with Rob Schnappt, who did. He was on the team that did the Rubberneck and Hell Below Starts Above, and he did a great job on it. So he's got ton of vintage gear and stuff. So it's great.
Yeah, I will say that was a pretty incredible album, and I do want to pick up more about that in a little bit because I want to kind of keep it in chronological order. Otherwise, people are going to get kind of confused about how things worked and when things came. But
sure,
I do think that there were some really, really, really good songs on that album, including a couple of never before released songs and a couple of original songs that weren't just reimagined songs. But
right.
Yeah. Speaking of Tyler, though, that was the one song that I actually played as a cover song in high school that I thought I did pretty well at. So that was the one thing. But you're absolutely right. Without the electric guitar, you try to play that on acoustic, and you're just sitting there for like 20 seconds. Like, what do I do now? Like the feedback's not there, so I'm just going to go ahead and go into the next verse. Or the little guitar solo part.
Yeah, and the next level up from that is when I do solo gigs with an acoustic guitar and just and do that song. And it's kind of fun because you just kind of have to figure out how to keep it moving,
Yeah, exactly. So let's dig into some of the other great music you've been making over the years, because it's not just Toadies that you've been a part of either. You worked on a band called Burton Brothers, had some EPs and put out a couple of LPs under that as well during the hiatus of Toadies. I found both of those albums absolutely incredible. Can you just talk about those years in between the Toadies albums and explain what it was like to do projects outside of the realm of kind of the thing that you're most known for?
Not easy is the easiest way to put it, the quickest way to put it. It was a kind of like just rebranding myself and redefining everything, and people are not into that a lot of times. But so we had small crowds and some decent crowds actually, and but they were devout. I mean, they were there at every show, and yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was cool. It was trying to write songs that were not Toady songs and try to get out of like, hey, get away from that. Try to get away from, get into a different vibe, a little more poppy and a little more mainstream sound. And
I mean, the song Beautiful Life, I feel like it could fit in the Toadies, but it is a lot more of that pop rock genre for sure. Like that's
right. Yeah, the most Toady song on either record is Buried in Your Black Heart, and I had written that riff when the band broke up, when the Toadies broke up for that hiatus, and I thought, well, I'd go somewhere else with it now, Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you did, because like I said, all the songs I've heard of Burton Brother, fantastic. Actually, I think about 6, 7, 8 years ago, something like that, I think I saw like a post from you guys on social media. It's like special on back order catalog albums, and I just bought literally every album because I was like, all right, I actually don't own some of these on CD, so I was like, what I don't have I just bought, and I got like seven or eight albums all at once, and I was like, every single thing was awesome.
Cool. Thank you. Awesome.
Yeah. All right, so I did see in an interview, recent interview, that you guys are now actually gathering new music for the potential of a new album. I think that interview came out in like December of 2021 though. So I was curious, like, has there been more progress made on that album in that time, or is there more that you're willing to share?
Well, I'm churning out bits and pieces since lockdown, and it's just, it's interesting because I don't know how everybody else dealt with work and lockdown, but when I'm at home and I feel like I need to write a record, it feels like I'm just being super lazy.
Yeah.
Because I'll come in and work for a little bit and then go watch a movie and, but then at the end of the year, I just went through my Logic files and I had just so much stuff that I just like put it down and forget about it,
Yeah.
And so, there's a ton of stuff. It's just a matter of getting it all worked out from riff to song, and then figuring out which ones fit together in an album format, which I've always really been. I've looked at every record as an LP. Like that's the way that I want the set list to go on the record. I want it to get about halfway through, and then it goes in a little bit different direction for side B.
Yeah.
My favorite records do that.
Yeah. And I was actually going to say, because I was going to mention this, but you kind of brought it up early, but track lists are always an interesting thing for me. And also just compiling songs that you have from a catalog that is unreleased, right? So only you know of everything that's on your computer, but how much do you write for each album? How do you narrow it down? And then how do you kind of process the track list? I mean, you just said you kind of start one way and then kind of veer off in a different direction for the track list, but is it always something kick ass to start it off? Is it always that punch up front? Do you just change it whenever you feel like it? Do you feel like there's a kind of natural progression of how it should be played? Do you think it's hey, this is a live version, this is how it should go?
It depends. It's really, I play with it a lot. Like the last, as far as the writing goes, it varies from me having completed demos that we go in and in a studio with better gear. And that was how that went for the longest time. And, with some input from the band members and stuff, but I'm the driver, and then it kind of evolved into, we went into a session with Frenchie Smith and Austin, who's a great producer. And we were going to go do a demo session. This is years ago. And it just kept going and going and going. And we walked out with a complete record with 18 songs to choose from to put on an album. And and that was just totally different from the way I've done things. And so it varies really. This next record, we're going to try to do it old school and as live, as air quotes, as live as possible. Yeah. So we'll try to get everything mapped out and done and go back to we're going to try to do it on tape again.
Nice.
And so we thought, well, if we're doing that, when we were poor, tape is very expensive. So we gave ourselves 2 takes, maybe 3. Yeah. And then if we couldn't get it 3 takes, fuck it, we're just going to move on.
Yeah, exactly.
So we really worked on saving the money that way. And we're trying to bring that ethic back on this new record because it really has an urgency to it to get in there and, it's a different vibe.
Yeah. It's great that you mentioned that because I have talked to a couple of other bands about that. And, when you're in the process of creating things digitally and you can take as much time and do as many new effects as you want during the production and the mixing and the mastering and the recording process, I feel like a lot of that live energy is lost and it just kind of sucks out some of that human element of it. Right. So, I always told people, back when I recorded the one LP that I ever did, in the studio, you had to be good. You had to show up, practiced and prepared and get it done as fast as you possibly could without too many mistakes. And I feel like when you do that, that's still the best LP that I've ever put out. And everything I've done since that is I've had all the time in the world to make. I'm like, this sounds so much worse. How did I do that? Yeah.
I even with my Logic Pro, which I'm sitting at my workstation right now, and I have a preset blank track that's got 3 different good amp sounds. Yeah. And a good bass sound and a good drum sound, because I'll sit there and play a riff and then start screwing with the settings and then wait a minute, how'd that go? It's you get distracted. So it's easy to do with Pro Tools for sure.
Yeah, exactly. A little bit of EQ, maybe a little reverb on the vocals or whatever. And that's pretty much all you need to start.
Yeah, totally.
Awesome. So I want to go back and talk about the music of the Toadies over the years, because there's just a certain aura that you kind of put around the music that makes it a bit chilling, but also absolutely rocking. Songs like we've talked about, Possum Kingdom and Tyler are examples of these dark songs where, Tyler's kind of like this abduction story. And then Possum Kingdom, I saw your explanation of that in the documentary you guys have put together, the Stories of Rubberneck, where it's kind of the sequel to I Burn, which I didn't know that for years. I had no idea that those 2 songs were related because they're not next to each other in subsequent order or anything, but they're just eerie and dark and stuff. So I know these aren't autobiographical songs by any means. I don't think you're a secret serial killer or anything like that, but I assume you do find a way to relate to these characters and the stories you write the songs about. So I have to ask, like, what part of you is that dark side that connects you with these songs?
Well, real quick, there is an autobiographical side, if I could say that word. Like Backslider was the last song that I wrote that went onto Rubberneck, and that's straight up like terror. That's what that's about. And but as far as the horror stuff, I like spent my teens and 20s just reading every horror thing I could get my hands on. I read all Stephen King and all kinds of stuff. And when I was super young, I wasn't allowed to go to see scary movies or R-rated movies, so I would buy the book. And holy crap, that is way scarier than the movie is. So, and it was just in there, and I just I love it. And as far as the first person, I kind of use first person a lot. Because I remember I can't remember how old I was super young, and I read some Poe. And I get to the end of it, and I'm like, holy crap, this guy murdered somebody. Somebody go pick him up. Why did I just read? But later I got it, of course. But anyway, I just love that stuff.
Yeah, it's very cool. So
I also like the idea of really pretty music with really fucked up, disturbing lyrics. That's always, or vice versa. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like a good metal song that's just heartfelt love. That's just as cool. The other way around.
Yeah. Well, I think that I think it was actually Edgar Allan Poe from memory who said the saddest thing you can do is write a love song about a woman that's dead, but it's also like the most like joy or an inspiring thing you can do as well, because it's like people really relate to that, but then it's like soul crushing at the same time. So I was like, it's about love, but it's about somebody who's deceased, so it's like good and bad like juxtaposed together.
Yeah.
Pretty interesting.
One of my favorite songs, Joy Division, Bizarre Love Triangle. I can't remember the name of the song. That's terrible. It just escaped me. But the whole song is about, I can't wait to get home from the war and talk to my wife and kids. I can't wait to be with my family. That's the chorus. Yeah. It's just beautiful. It's real pretty and kind of going along. And then he gets to the last verse, and he gets home and his wife is reading the letter from the government saying that he died in the war. And I'm like, that's just cool. That's a really good storytelling, and it's engaging, and I love that stuff. Yeah, very much so. So I did mention the documentary that your guys' guitarist Clark Voegeler put together about the making of Rubberneck, called Dark Secrets: The Stories of Rubberneck, where you do detail some of the processes over the top of the recorded footage from the time, which was pretty cool to see you guys, out there shooting guns in the middle of Texas, or I think it was in Texas, wasn't it? That was in California, actually. Oh, yeah. California. Okay. Yeah. And then I think for anyone who knows kind of more about the album, they can go watch a short film, or who wants to know more about the album can go watch a short film. It's absolutely phenomenal. But can you just talk about how that came together and what it was like to revisit some of those old home videos and, doing the narration for that, and just thinking, man, it's crazy. Cause going back, if I'm going back to when I was younger and talking about how I was writing songs, I'd be like, honestly, I don't even remember how this song came together. Like it just did. And then like, sometimes I feel like I don't remember doing some of that stuff. And it's like, that's better than I thought I was. Right. Yeah. Yeah. There's some of that. I just like, that was just such a pivotal time, writing that record and starting the band and, getting pissed off at the whole Fort Worth cover music scene at the time. That was the only gigs we could get, was cover songs. And trying to squeeze in some of our own songs in there, but not too many, because we won't get our pitcher of beer. Yeah. So you don't want anybody to walk out while you're playing. Yeah, exactly. So then, just kind of blowing that up and getting rid of that and starting off totally new. And so that's just kind of burned into my consciousness, Yeah, it is interesting going back to see that old footage, though. There was a lot of fire. Yeah, for sure. And I think, I live in Las Vegas. I've been here for about 16 years. Vegas is very similar in the sense that if you don't play covers,
you pretty much don't get to play a bar or a show or anything. It's like,
Sure.
it's insane. So I know what you mean. And I have a lot of friends and bands here that are like, yeah, we resist the urge, but at the same time, those bands make a lot of money for just playing cover songs.
Yeah, totally.
So I was always curious about your actual vocal performances and how you feel about the fact that you kind of put so much rasp and grit into your vocals. You know, this was something that, you know, when I first heard you guys, I was blown away because, you know, the West Coast kind of grunge scene was blowing up about that time. And a lot of those guys had they actually had good voices, but they would tend to mumble or not be very clear or cohesive, not have professional sounding voices. Maybe with the exception of Chris Cornell, who I think you're kind of more in that vein where you had a really loud, raspy, professional sound. And I was like, no idea how you sing like that, keep it up and do a whole set. And now you've been doing it for 30 years. I've seen you guys twice in the last 6 or 7 years, and you still sound incredible when you sing the song. So
thanks,
first,
man.
how did your vocal style come about like that? And then how do you manage to keep it? Because I know a lot of your peers haven't been able to keep their voices that long.
Oh, geez. I don't know. I mean, I did run into, let me back up. Before we learned to spend money properly to take care of ourselves, instead of in-ear monitor, really saved me because we were on tour and it just went away and I just couldn't because I hadn't learned how to warm up yet.
Yeah.
And I've been doing it a long time, but I hadn't learned how to warm up yet. And the monitors were never loud enough to balance everything out because we're so damn loud on stage. So yeah, there was a learning curve there of how to take care of myself because you don't stay 25, forever. But I don't know. I mean, as far as how I got that style, when I started doing bands, nobody wanted to sing. And so I'm like, well, damn it, I'll sing, I guess, so we can do it,
Yeah.
And it was just getting behind the mic, and I was not afraid to make an ass of myself and continue to be, I guess. But and it just developed, I guess. It just kind of turned into like what I wanted to hear, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like I had the similar situation. I mean, I grew up playing, having to be a lead singer and stuff like that. But I was like, I never wanted to be the front person. I was always like, hey, can you join the band? I've written the songs. All I need is somebody to sing it. And at that time, I wasn't good enough to play and sing at the same time. So I was like, I don't want to figure out how to do this. I'd rather just play guitar because then I'm not the one in front. But then I found everybody had stage fright or just didn't know how to sing. And it was like, well, this isn't working. So then I eventually just practiced enough to actually do it myself and got okay. But, not nearly as popular enough. I lived in North Dakota at the same time. So no one's coming to North Dakota to find talent, and I'm not going anywhere as a band in North Dakota. But, so it was a bit interesting. But yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head because I've talked to other bands and the singers are usually like, it was more because nobody else wanted to sing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And as far as the doing two things at once thing, that still to this day, every record, even when I'm doing demos, I'll get an idea for vocals and I'll pick up a guitar and play the riff that I just recorded just to sing over it and see how that sounds. Like, nope, can't do that yet. So, it's just, you have to learn them both super well and then separate. It's the weirdest thing to try to, and then the scary part is when you're on stage and you realize you're doing it and you're like, oh, geez.
Yeah.
Then it gets all upside down. But yeah, it's just a weird thing of focusing on one thing or the other and letting the other one just happen.
Yeah. It's a great point. Cause your brain just has to do it pretty much without thinking. It's like breathing and blinking. You just can't think about it or else you're going to mess it up.
Our mantra, whenever if we get edgy about a show or we haven't played in a while, is like, don't get in your own way.
Yeah.
And just get out there, how to do it and just go do it. And it sounds simple and dumb, but it really, once you just do that, it really works. Yeah,
for sure. So I will say, and we'll get to some of the other stuff after Rubberneck, but I will say that Rubberneck, it is filled with incredible songs. It is actually, I just did a top 100 all-time albums, rock albums of all time list. And you guys are actually, with Rubberneck, we're number 9 all time. Cool. So, Pink Floyd, The Wall, number 1. Most modern rock, I would say it would take a miracle to overcome that for me. And I'm not that old. I'm only 40 now, but I've never heard a band create something as good as the Wall, but you're damn close. I mean, you've got some albums that really kick ass, and songs like I Come From the Water, you mentioned Backslider, I Burn, Possum Kingdom, Tyler, every single album on there was awesome. But I was curious, you did mention in that documentary about how you were told not to start off with an instrumental. I've seen tons of bands start off with instrumentals now, but it was true. Like back in the day, you had to start off, if you had an instrumental, it was towards the end or maybe second or third to last song is like a bridge to something greater. But it then kind of became way more common once you guys did it. I saw bands doing, including a new band called Doc Rotten, a punk band from New Jersey. Their first album off their new album, or their first song off their new album, is an instrumental to kind of push into the album. So kind of how did that explain, or how do you explain that experience? And then do you think it was like the thing to do with, I think it's Mexican Hairless is the first song off the album.
Well, there's two reasons that I chose to do that. First and foremost was the first Reverend album had an instrumental off the top. And I just thought that was a cool, like, who does that? And I thought that was cool. And I kind of wrote that song. That's Mexican Hairless is me trying to knock off the Reverend Horton Heat.
Okay.
So that's what that is. And it doesn't fit anywhere else. It just didn't fit, and three songs in the instrumental. I don't want to do that. Start off side B. I could do that maybe, but nah, I already had this idea for side B, and it just kept rolling back up to the top of the list. And it's funny. I just had the worst attitude with our label, and I'm surprised that they didn't just drop us right out of the gate. But, which I expected every day. But
and that was Interscope at the time, right?
Yeah. And our A&R guy, he said, "Man, we can't start off with an instrumental because people get the record, they'll listen to it, and they'll take it back thinking that it's defective because there's no vocals on the first song." and my response was, "Those would be stupid people, and I don't want stupid people listening to my record, so I'm okay with this." He didn't like that, but so
he's like, "That's 85% of anybody's fan base."
Yeah, exactly. But that's funny. But he, just to appease him, Rob and Tom, who were working together at the time, and I went in the studio. We were still out in Mendocino County, and said, "Okay, look, I'm just going to throw up a mic. There's already a mic there. I'm going to just put on that track, have some smoke, and just go in there and see what happens, and we'll build around that, and it'll be fine."
Yeah.
And I went in, and if you listen closely, there's a section in the middle where I just start cracking up because it's just a stupid idea to try to sing on an instrumental.
That's right. Well, I think there is like a scream in there or something,
I think there's a little something in there, yeah.
Yeah, I think there is a little bit of vocal, but no words by any means. So
No.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. I mean, did you ever tell Reverend Horton Heat that was your homage to them, or?
Man, I don't know if I ever did.
It's interesting.
Ever came
like,
up.
"Hey, Reverend Horton Heat, go check out this podcast I was on."
Yeah.
That's very cool. So yeah, I'm, like I mentioned, I'm not just a fan of Rubberneck. That album did make number 9 on my list, but No Deliverance, which actually is my second favorite album, made number 49 as well.
Oh, cool.
Songs like Man of Stone, You're the Song I Hate. That whole album is just absolutely awesome. I mean, I know a lot of like super fans, or kind of whatever you want to call them, like hardcore fans, think Heaven Below, Stars Above is like untouchable. It's like the greatest Toadies album of all time. And every time I ever see comments in your guys' Instagram feed or in social media, it's like, "When are you going to repress Stars Above?" And I'm like, you don't have any other questions for the people that are making this awesome music other than when are they going to reissue this one album? But to me, I mean, it was like, obviously after, when you guys went to go record Feel the first time, Interscope said, no chance, we're not releasing this. You did finally get a re-release Feeler after, after Interscope and breaking up and kind of coming back together and everything. But what was some of the, obviously between the first instance of Feeler getting dropped, then going to Heaven Below, Hell Below, Stars Above, and then going to No Deliverance and all these other things. kind of what was that era of like being in the band like, and how did it feel like to kind of put like, these albums together at the time? Did it feel like you were under pressure? Did you feel like,
Oh yeah.
Hey, we got to get back to the top? Or what was kind of the idea behind some of these albums?
Yeah, Hell Below. Well, Feeler and Hell Below, there was a lot of pressure, and there was some tactical errors on our part, in that we toured. Man, we toured so much. I think one year we did 250 shows in a year, and it was gone so much that I just flew home on a little bit of break. I flew home and put my car in storage and disconnected the battery and all my stuff and got rid of my apartment, and that's just it. I'm gone. And so yeah, we were gone, and we toured, and we just kept touring and kept touring and kept touring, instead of taking some time off to start on the second record. And I still have this disconnect. I'm starting to work through it after all these years of when I'm on tour, I'm in tour mode. When I'm writing, I'm in writing mode. And those two don't have to be separate. I don't know why they became that way, but that's just my brain. And so I'm trying to get that put all back together. But, so I had to be home for a while before I could start getting everything moving and get it going. And I knew that there was tons of pressure to write Possum Kingdom again. And it's just a weird time.
Yeah. I can imagine, obviously, with the release of Hell Below and Stars Above, not having the commercial success of like Rubberneck, that there was probably some maybe inner band even dialogue about like, what the heck are we doing? How is this going to go? Where are we going to go from here, kind of thing? Did that ever happen at all?
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, most of us in the band at the time had the attitude of, well, let's see, at that point, we had replaced the guitar player with Clark, who was on the second record, and he's still in the band. And so it's me, Clark, Rez, who was on the first record, and Lisa, who was on the first record. And most of us had the attitude of, well, with Rubberneck, we got no support. We got no backing from the label. We just had to go out and bust ass. And we got lucky because we kept talking to people and kept meeting people. And a program director in Florida picked it up and blew it up. And then it went to the West Coast, and we went and schmoozed that guy. Then it went to the East Coast, and we went and schmoozed that guy. And like, we're just chasing it, if we got a little momentum, the label would come in and go, look what we did. And so okay, thanks, and that's the way it started off with Hell Below. And that was just the way I thought they always did things.
Yeah.
And because that had been my history. And so we got about midway through that tour, and Lisa was just like, no, not having it. And poof, just disappeared. So that kind of put a hole in that boat, which, at that point we'd have had legal problems and all sorts of garbage with labels and managements and just all kinds of headaches. And I was just fuck it, just like, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to do something besides music.
Yeah.
And came home, and, it lasted about a day, and I'm like, oh, I like doing music.
I like all the music part. I just don't like all the bullshit part.
Yeah. So got the Burden Brothers together and went out and did that.
Yeah, that's awesome. So then obviously you've released more albums. Obviously we did talk about the final version of Feeler. You did do Play Rock Music and The Lower Side of Uptown, all fantastic albums. All of them have even what I would consider, single ready hits. Like, I'm trying to think of what the last one off of Lower Side of Uptown was called. God damn it. I can't think of the single that came off there.
I don't remember what the last song was.
Yeah, it's been a couple of years since I've listened to the album, but listened to it heavily when it came out. I cannot remember the damn name of the song, but anyway, the singles that come off that album, and the single that came off that one, it was amazing. I was like, it felt like the Toadies had never left, because now I actually got to hear you on the radio for the first time in probably 15 years for that single, and I just was like blown away that like it came back, and I was like, it felt like it never left, even though I had to like scratch and kind of claw to find the music before, because released on Kirtland Records, a little independent label, not being played by every radio station in America for most of this stuff. But did you ever feel like, once you get famous, I feel like this got to be a kind of a curse, because once you get famous and then you kind of aren't famous for a few years, people kind of put you off to the side and say they're not worth kind of bringing back. Did that ever kind of occur or happen to you guys, or does that feeling ever kind of persist through any of the recording or even the marketing of some of these albums?
Well, it's a pretty persistent thing if you let it bother you, you know.
Yeah.
But we were fully prepared for that with when we put out Hell Below. I'm sorry, the third record.
No Deliverance.
And yeah, No Deliverance. And we thought, well, we're coming back, and we've been gone for years, and it took so long before the second record came out, and so we just thought, well, we'll go out, and it's going to suck. It's just going to suck, but I want to do it, and we all wanted to do it, so we did. And the crowds were like, they were big. They were bigger than we went out for Hell Below, and they were just like hungry for it, and that's when we realized. I mean, everybody says this about their fans, but that's when we realized these guys really are like adamant, like hardcore fans.
Yeah.
And loyal. Everybody says that, but it's like, it's fan pandering, but it's true, man. It's like people that really love music, they will drive and go get it, you know, go see it.
Yeah.
And it's really cool.
Yeah. And that's one of the things I can say about, you know, the Toadies and a few other bands. You know, I don't ever like to talk about the jam bands like the Jimmy Buffetts and Fish and all these guys, because half of that appeal to be in the crowd there is also that you can take as many psychedelics or illicit drugs as you want, and then also enjoy the music that happens to be playing at the same time while you're tripping acid or whatever. But you know, most rock concerts are you go for the music, and then that's the fun part.
Right.
So I know you actually have. I was going to say, obviously, I wanted to bring up Heretics again because we did talk about that, but you know, there's some really, I would say, look, if nobody's heard Heretics and you're like, oh, I love Rubberneck, go check out Heretics, because it's like campfire blowing your mind version of Rubberneck and some of the other songs, obviously, but it's got Tyler on there. I think it's got Possum Kingdom from memory, but it's also got like original songs. You know, Jigsaw Girl and Dollskin, I thought were probably those two versions on Heretics were actually, in my opinion, probably better than the other versions. Then it's got original songs like In the Belly of the Whale and Queen of Scars, which absolutely great. You even covered the Blondie song, which was awesome as well. But you know, we don't have time to go song by song for every album, but you know, did you find something when we talked about this a little bit, but did you find something about yourself, the band and the music scene, while putting this kind of record together and putting out more music out over the years, that, you know, you have different perspective now when you were 23, 24, 25 and putting out songs like this, where you're just like, we're kind of doing it for ourselves, but also it sounds really cool.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's definitely a change, especially being on an indie, and you go from a major where you give demos, and then you get approval to do the second record, and then they just are like, I want to hear progress. To an indie, and our indie, we, like most records, we're like mixing. We're already done recording and we're almost done mixing when they're like, hey guys, can we hear anything at all? You know, yeah, oh shit, yeah, it's here, sorry. You know,
it's been 3 months. Sorry about that.
Yeah, exactly. But you know, the other side of it is, with that little bit of pressure, I mean, lack of pressure, it's just more creative. And there was one instance one night while we were doing Heretics, and I can't remember what we were doing. I mean, we were driving back to where we were staying from the studio, and I was like, what are we doing? What are we even doing? You know? And somebody, I think it was Clark, was like, whatever the fuck we want. And I'm like, oh yeah, thanks. Yeah. Right. We're still doing that. Cool.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of the attitude of most artists, I think, is like, you don't want to have that normal day job. Even when you have a job kind of in the industry, like, you know, working for you know, maybe in a venue, or working for you know, a musical instrument manufacturer or something like that. Like, you still want to be involved in music some way or other and still have your ability to be creative. So I know obviously you've opened a new business in Texas where you built a rehearsal space called The Loop, which has actually expanded recently. So talk about that endeavor and what it's been like since you started that. And I believe you started with your wife, correct?
Yeah, indeed. Well, as you know, from being a musician, it's hard. most places where you rehearse are just super crappy.
Yeah.
I mean, they're
Garages
dingy,
mostly.
yeah, dingy, dirty, and people living there and bugs and it's just gross.
Yeah.
And the way that this usually goes that I've experienced for the most part, and not every time, but for the most part, somebody will rent an office building, and then if you're lucky, they'll change out the doors to be a little more heavy duty.
Yeah.
And that's the end of the story. And then you rent that room, and if somebody decides to go up their drop ceiling and over the wall down into your room while you're not there and take all your stuff, then that's just the way it goes.
Yep.
It's, you know, the Toadies started off in a used store, like a metal shed with, you know, and so just I thought one day I'm going to have enough, you know, I'm going to have the knowledge and the money and everything at the same time, and the opportunity, which is the biggest part of it, to build a place that I would want to rehearse at.
Yeah.
And so that's what we did. And Rachel, it was just the best stroke of luck. We found a property that was the right size for a steel. I mean, I still can't believe we got it. And it's in the location we wanted, that part of town we wanted. Fort Worth has a loop around it.
Yeah.
820, and we wanted to be inside the loop so that we're convenient. It's clean. My father is a general contractor, and he came down from Oklahoma and made it all happen, and like saved us a ton of money and sped everything up, and it's just been fantastic. And then we broke ground on expanding into the parking lot to double our floor space, our footprint, and we broke ground in 10 days. About maybe 2 or 3 weeks later, COVID hit, and so it was pre-lockdown at that point, and everybody knew it was coming. And so the crew, I stayed home. I kind of was bummed I didn't get to be there for that part, but I stayed home for the most part, but they all just busted ass, sun up, sundown. And then it just happened in like a month. Like it was just crazy. So anyway, that's long story, but we love it there.
Yeah. I was gonna say, if any bands looking to get rehearsal space, definitely check it out, because I know exactly, like I have friends who like had their rehearsal spaces broken into. The doors just had the locks and handles all removed. But fortunately, some of them don't get robbed and some of them do get robbed. But it's one of those things, like nobody's there. There's no security. There's no cameras. There's no insurance policy or anything like that. So having it in a clean, good, secure part of town is always good. And you see it, like, I feel like it's more common now with touring bands getting all their gear stolen out of their vans on the tour and stuff like that. It's just, you don't want that. You don't want to have to replace all your gear. It's just absolutely insane what's happening.
What a nightmare. Yeah, especially after collecting gear for 30 years. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we've got 22 rooms. They've been full. Every once in a while, we'll have an empty room for a month. And then we've got a giant rehearsal room for hourly that's got a full, like a medium-sized club PA in it. It's just
nice.
Pretty baller. Pretty cool.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you being here. Obviously, we'll add some links to, the loop. We'll put some links to the music and everything, and pretty much anything I can think of Toadies related in the show notes below. But did you have anything else that you want to plug, or anything that you want to say to listeners or anyone who may not know who Toadies are yet before we go today?
Well, we're doing the Rubberneck tour, as you mentioned, that starts in September, and it's going to be, I think, September 13th through October 21 or 2. It's going to be insane. It's going to be a long one. So we're going to go everywhere.
Excellent.
Yeah, come out and see the band. We're going to do the whole record in sequence, and I don't know if we're going to do it at the top or at the bottom, but we'll do the whole record in sequence, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think most people do that when they play a full album. They play that first, and then they play like more hits or whatever after that. But I think in you guys' sense, it kind of makes sense that you might put it at the end of the set, because it's such a fucking rad album. just to end on I Burn is always a good ending song anyway.
Yeah. So yeah, we've done that. We've done it both ways, but we really like putting it like second part of the main set, and then we'll have an encore of just whatever we want to do. So it's a lot of fun though. Our objective is to get your mind out of whatever is bothering you and make you just jump up and down and bang your head up and down.
Yeah, very cool.
That's what we're gunning for.
Awesome. I have to look at the dates again, because I'm not sure if they've been switched around, but I don't think you're going to Vegas, but hopefully you're somewhere nearby and I can drive there. So we'll see if I can make it.
I hope so.
Yeah. Awesome. I want to thank you so much, Vaden, for being here. It's been an awesome conversation today. And if you guys obviously want to check out the music, check out the tour, check out anything that they're working on, check out the show notes below this video and this podcast to check out all that cool stuff and the links. If you like what you heard on the show, please make sure to subscribe to the podcast and share it with your friends on social media. You can see the full video interview on our YouTube channel as well. Also, if you want to check out some cool written content or any of the products or merch we have available, go to poweredbyrock.com to read our absolutely free rocking blog full of album reviews, interviews, and lists to keep you entertained, including the top 100 albums of all time, which we'll see 2 Toadies albums on there. And find our gear as well so you can pick up some items to play and look like a rock legend. That's our show for today. We'll see you soon for the next episode. Until then, rock on.
Supposed to be